Welcome to That's Canon, the podcast talking about the Canon film series and other similar movies. This is episode 31, and I'm your host, Phil.
And I'm Greg.
And Greg, James Bond came to visit us this morning.
Old, kind of washed up James Bond.
But it's insane to think that Roger Moore, at this point, was still doing James Bond movies because he looked pretty old in The Naked Face.
Whoa, was he really?
Yes. So The Naked Face is the movie for this week. Came out in 1984. Octopussy was released in 1983, and he still had A View to a Kill that came out in 1985.
Wow, that's actually pretty surprising. I guess I don't know. I'm not a huge James Bond fan. Like I haven't seen all of the older ones, but I thought for sure he had been done for like 5, 6, 7 years by this point.
1-2 decades at least.
2 right? Like I thought it was like way behind him, and this was something he was doing like way later in his career when maybe he was kind of coming off of the James Bond fame. And I had this whole thing I was going to ask about, like, was he slumming in this Canon movie? But no, he was like, it sounds like he was at the height of his career still.
Yeah, he was still actively James Bond. And that Octopussy, while it was a critical failure as a James Bond movie and is considered one of the worst James Bond movies, it still made 187 million at the box office. And A View to a Kill, the one that comes out after, made 152 million. So despite him being in the part of being in the bad James Bond movie era, he was still pulling in big box office as James Bond.
He's clearly still a draw. And yeah, like you said, he looks old in this movie. I mean, not like old, but he doesn't look like someone who you would think would be doing action spy stuff, I guess. I guess that's all just makeup. I don't know.
He looks like your grandpa, right? He looks like
your grandpa when you were a young kid.
Exactly.
Because he doesn't have, he has kind of like blondish, reddish hair that's kind of graying. I mean, he doesn't have like bright white hair. He's not that old, but
exactly. You definitely could take him in a fight in this movie.
As we found out at the end.
Yes. The Naked Face, like I said, came out in 1984. It's directed by Brian Forbes. I've never heard of this guy, but he is a all-star. He is a writer, director, actor. He does it all. Greg. He directed the original Stepford Wives in 1975. And
good claim to fame.
Exactly. Very, very big guy. This is around the end of his career. I guess you can say that about Roger Moore as well. They're in the twilight of their career. The movie also stars Elliot Gould, who I absolutely love. He's in MASH. He's Monica and Ross's dad in Friends. That's probably what most people would really know him as from like the 90s era.
Very familiar face.
A movie called Capricorn 1, which we'll never watch because it's not a canon film. But Greg, let's pause really quick and I'll tell you about the premise of Capricorn 1, and everyone should go out and watch it. Capricorn 1 stars Elliot Gould, James Brolin, and future murderer O.J. Simpson.
Okay.
Start. The movie is about the first crewed mission to Mars called Capricorn 1. And it's essentially them going to Mars, landing, but it's all fake. It's as if the government is filming a fake Mars landing. And these astronauts are upset about it because, America's essentially telling lies to the public, and someone may want to spill the truth. It is a very compelling thriller.
That's actually kind of a cool idea. I thought at first I was like, oh, Mission to Mars with O.J. Simpson, pass.
He's going to kill him in space.
He's going to kill him in space. Yeah. But no, that's like kind of turning the whole like moon landing conspiracy theories on their head. And that's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, it is a very good movie.
Go watch Capricorn 1.
But let's stick around. Let's talk about The Naked Face, though, now that you guys are back after watching Capricorn 1.
You're welcome.
The Naked Face was nominated for Best Film in Mist Fest, a film festival about mystery films. So we kind of go into this with high hopes. And, I guess if we're going to say a little tease in the beginning, I was not disappointed.
Yes, for the most part, I was not disappointed. I'll there are parts of it that I have issue with, mostly near the end,
Same
but
here.
we'll get to that. I suspect you and I will probably be on the same page with that, but
Exactly. And you can watch this movie on Tubi. I had 3 commercial breaks, which I thought was astounding. The first one came in like 7 minutes, and I just assumed that it was going to be every 7 minutes.
you
But
had
it
commercial
seemed
breaks?
on Tubi, yeah, I did.
Huh.
It hit me with 3 of them. Maybe because I watched it before you. It went the naked face hit its commercial quota for the month.
There's someone watching this? Well, that's plenty.
Yeah, exactly. So the naked face, the movie opens up. At first, I thought again. I always forget sometimes that Canon and MGM were like a partnership, because it opens up and it has the MGM lion, and I was like, oh god,
Yeah, again.
we messed up. But the Canon logo eventually comes in, and we kind of get this montage of Roger Moore, who plays a doctor in this. He's a psychiatrist. He plays Dr. Judd Stevens, but they really just call him Dr. Stevens throughout
Yeah.
the. Do you think it's weird that last week we watched a movie with Judd Nelson, and now this week we're watching a movie with Dr. Judd Stevens?
I did not think that was weird because I did not remember his first name.
He's kind of, it's intercut between Dr. Judd Stevens talking to patients and a man disassembling a rifle and putting it into a briefcase. So you kind of get the thing of there's an assassination plot that's going on. And then we cut to a cemetery, and Roger Moore is there. He's visiting a grave, and we don't really know at this point who it is, but to set the scene, Roger Moore is wearing a yellow rain slick.
Yes.
It's important to note this. The a car pulls up, the window rolls down, and out comes a rifle, and it's aiming towards Dr. Judd Stevens, MD, waiting to take him out, and then a funeral procession goes by and ruins the assassination attempt.
What a terrible assassin.
I know. I find it odd
Foiled.
that first he had the line of shot and he didn't take it.
Yeah. For
Second,
a couple
like,
seconds, yeah.
I know, like he totally could have killed James Bond. But I don't know. There's something wrong with the montage of him disassembling the rifle only to reassemble it a mere seconds later. Right? Isn't that kind of weird?
Yeah, that's the little odd sequencing. Unless there's like a passage of time or something that we're not seeing. I don't know. It was kind of a weird thing to put in there.
Yeah. Anyways, they miss killing James Bond, and the funeral. So the assassin packs up and leaves, and Dr. Judd Stevens leaves off none the wiser.
Can
Right?
I just say I've got a soft spot for like nice wooded cemetery scenes. There's something about it I just like. And this one was really good too. We got one I think in 10 to Midnight when they were at the funeral scene in that movie.
Yes.
And because it's got like we're still in the opening like you said, so we've got really nice kind of orchestral score going on, and he's kind of walking through the cemetery to the grave. I don't know, it was shot really nice. It was even simple things like a nice wooded park or a cemetery is just a breath of fresh air coming from most of the crap we've watched in the past couple of weeks.
It's interesting that you say it. It does have a nice score, but man, it has like 2 songs that
Yeah,
it repeats constantly throughout the entire movie.
you're right. We get this one, which is kind of like the nice calm music, and then we get the one score for all of the tension scenes and the scary things,
Yeah.
and that's really it.
But it does sound nice. So we cut to Roger Moore. He's going to work, and oh wait, yeah. I assume it's his kid. Oh, that's why I wrote. I thought it was his kid at the one point at the gravestone. I'm trying to read my fucking notes here.
Because the cemetery, the gravestone, it says Stevens, right? But we don't get
Yeah.
like we don't know his his family situation at this point yet. So we just know it's someone close to him with the same last name.
Exactly. So Dr. Stevens, he goes to like a jail and he's talking to someone, but we don't really get to see the conversation. We just see that he goes and he tries to help someone. And then he returns home. He lives in a nice high-rise condo area, right?
Really
And
nice apartment.
yeah, I always wonder where these apartments exist because I've never seen anything like this. And the movie, until the very end, I didn't realize where we were at. It's set in
Okay, right?
Chicago.
I would okay. I'm so happy you had that same reaction because I thought for sure we were in like New York or like Manhattan. I think it was his apartment that put me in that direction because I thought he had one of those like a waterfront apartment
Yeah,
like along one of the rivers. I don't know the geography that well, but I thought for sure that we were in New York, and I was yeah near the end where someone says in the entire Chicago area. I was like, wait, what?
yeah, exactly. It was. I hate when I don't know where I'm at, and it's not like there's some. It's not like they showed like the Bean or the Sears Tower, and I know it's not called the Sears Tower anymore, and I don't really give a shit because it's the Sears
It's the
Tower.
Sears Tower, damn it.
But they don't show any skyline to kind of set where we are at.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. Like there's no obvious landmarks, and no one just comes out and says it early on. Like
Yeah,
that throwaway line, oh, in the entire Chicago area. Say that in the beginning of the movie, so
exactly.
that we know where we are.
Maybe have like the Cubs game is in town, like
Yeah,
something. I don't know.
or the newspaper, the Chicago Tribune
Exactly.
or whatever it is.
The
Yeah, show me
Chicago
that.
Tribune. He sits down to read a paper.
Yeah.
Anyways, minor gripe aside, Dr. Stevens, he goes to work the next day and he's helping a man work through his feelings of guilt because he's bisexual or he's a closeted homosexual. I thought the scene actually worked really well.
Yeah.
Um, it didn't have any of that 80s anti-gay slights. At this point, they don't have it. That's
No.
not to say that it doesn't eventually come really hard and out of nowhere. But right
Yes.
here, Roger Moore is a very good doctor and, kind of listens to the man. I was just really surprised and shocked by how well they handled this scene.
Yeah, it was very I mean, it was heartbreaking for one, but it was a surprisingly modern sounding description of. I mean, the guy he's clearly he's closeted gay man, and he's kind of living that double life, and he's feeling like a lot of guilt because he's got a family who doesn't know, and he's got a wife and kids, and this really kind of like I said, a heartbreaking description of this like I don't know what to do. I'm living two lives, and I'm feeling ashamed and guilty, and but I can't stop, and it's like a really kind of modern description of like what you would think someone like in that position would be feeling. And you're right. In other 80s movies, it would not be handled that tactfully. Very
Exactly.
surprising.
So the man's session's over and he leaves. It's not said intentionally at this point, but the man leaves with Roger Moore's rain slick, his yellow rain slick. And the man goes off and he goes to buy some flowers and he's randomly stabbed in the lung area under his arm and
Yeah.
he dies. Now, I got
Ouch.
to say, I'm surprised that random that probably sounds really horrible when I say this. Random killings like that are probably 100% easy to get away with if there's no motive or connection between you and someone else, right? A crowded area, a quick action, and then you're gone.
Just shanking someone in the side in the
Yeah.
middle of a crowded street. Yeah, that is a little disturbing to think about how, yeah, especially if you don't know the person, they don't find any prints or anything. A little scary to think about.
They do this as well in the movie and in the book Hannibal, where Hannibal goes up and like it looks like he punches him like right above the crotch and the guy just starts bleeding out everywhere because he actually just got stabbed in like his bladder area. And he dies, and no one's the wiser because it just looks like he's doubled over in pain or something, and no one notices a random dude,
Terrifying.
Exactly.
So like, I mean, at this point, it looks like it's like an anonymous killing. Yeah.
Yeah. As if you're not more worried about going back out in public after a pandemic. Now we're worried about getting hit randomly by people.
Sorry, everyone. That
Uh,
agoraphobia is going to go strong.
exactly. We get another scene back at Roger Moore's practice where he's talking to Ann Archer of That's Always Sunny in Philadelphia fame.
Yes. It took me a second. I think it was her like her nose and her mouth, her lips. That's the part of her face that looked very familiar to me.
Yes,
And some of the mannerisms when she's like mocking Dennis and Dee, but it's like that's Dennis and Dee's mom. How
exactly.
cool. I don't think I've seen her in anything else.
I think this is besides Always Sunny. This is, I think, the only thing I've ever seen Ann Archer in.
Yeah.
She plays a character named Anne Blake. Anne Blake. Uh, a totally worthless character, in my opinion, even though she's the crux of the story.
Yeah, that's a part of my disappointment, which we'll get into more later towards the end of the movie. But it's yeah, it is kind of a shame how much of a linchpin she is to the whole thing, and being kind of forgettable otherwise. I mean,
Exactly.
not like she did a bad job, the actress. It just they didn't give the character a whole lot of interesting things to do. And in a
Exa-
mystery, I feel like we talked about this last time. Like neither of us are huge mystery fans, but I feel like I know enough where I would there's nothing to like make me write her down in the back of my mind as like a potential suspect or something.
exactly.
There's no little interesting quirks or details that make me think, what's she involved in? She was just kind of there and then gone, and I kind of forgot about her.
Exactly. The conversation between her and Dr. Stevens is kind of about the marriage, but there is no marriage issue, she says. It's just she's just there kind of talking about nothing really.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing consequential to the overall plot of the movie. And then she eventually leaves, but in comes two cops after she leaves, and it's Elliot Gould, who's playing Detective Angeli, and Rob Steger, who's playing Lieutenant McGreevy. I've never seen Rob Steger in anything before, but he has quite the filmography, and I'm actually really surprised that I've never seen anything that he's
Yeah,
ever done because he's in a ton of stuff.
and he's talented. I think he's maybe has some of the best performances in this entire movie.
He outclasses everyone in this
Yes.
film. The two cops come in and they talk to Roger Moore's secretary, and they're like, "We need to talk to James Bond." And she's kind of like, "Oh, he doesn't like to be disturbed. Can I ask what this is in regards to?" And Lieutenant Steger is like, in a manner of speaking, no. I was like, "Holy crap, he is
That's
tough
stone
as
cold.
nails."
Yeah.
Exactly. Eventually, they do get into Roger Moore's office, and they kind of ask some leading questions at first, and then they bring up the fact that one of Roger Moore's patients has died and was stabbed, and that he was wearing Roger Moore's rain slick at the time. Roger
Right.
Moore is like, "Hey, it was raining. He didn't have an umbrella. I let him borrow it. You know,
Yeah.
that's unfortunate that that happens." But eventually, Roger Moore and the lieutenant realize that they know each other. Now, the lieutenant already knows, Roger Moore and the issue there. It comes to light that Roger Moore realizes who he is, and it
Yes.
turns out, uh, Roger Moore, he was like what? He was like on a jury, right?
He was an expert witness
Expert witness. That's
for
right.
for a criminal defense, and basically he is the reason. Roger Moore is the reason that this particular defendant got off of a murder charge with like an insanity plea, basically.
Exactly. Do you think that? I mean, the bad guy in this scene that we don't ever see, it's only talked about. Uh,
Yeah.
he gets his comeuppance. He goes to uh, essentially an insane asylum, probably for the rest of his life, right? Like,
Yeah,
is that not enough?
which I think, and they say a couple times, like he's never getting out. He's still here.
Yeah,
Like he's serving a life term. Yeah, because the detective who is he's kind of butting up against, the really good actor we talked about, he is really pissed off still apparently at this at Roger Moore's character, because he thinks that, like, you ruined my case. You got off on that stupid insanity plea, and that's no comfort to the cop that he killed, his family, and all that stuff. So there's a really strong tension after these two recognize each other. It's really like palpable. And I think that's a big part of why we think that detective is such a good performance, because
Yes.
you just hate this detective, even like right off the bat at the end of this scene. And I think there's a lot of talent behind an actor who can make you hate a character that much that quickly.
Oh, exactly. As soon as he started turning into a dick, I started rolling my eyes, and I was like, "But wait, this is what he's going for."
Yes. Yeah, we hate this character not because it's a bad movie, but like it's a good movie. It's a good performance. That's why we hate them so much.
Exactly.
Very impressive.
Elliot Gould, he's just in the background at this time. He doesn't really do anything in this scene or brings forth any kind of dialogue with Roger Moore.
Not really,
Uh,
no.
but Dr. Stevens, he was talking about how he let the patient borrow the rain slick, and he kind of goes into the patient's issue, which is that he's a closeted bisexual. And Lieutenant the lieutenant kind of goes off on this, and he says a whole bunch of colorful words to describe gay men.
Yes. Use
One
your
was like,
imagination.
is he obviously gay or is he butch? A lot of f bombs, a lot of stuff.
Yes.
And probably at the time, that's how people talked. It wasn't acceptable, or more acceptable as it was back then. Lieutenant McGreevy goes off on Dr. Stevens and says, like, hey, maybe you're having sex with this gay guy, or maybe the gay guy, is blackmailing you because you rebuked his advances, and that's why you had him killed. Because Lieutenant McGreevy just wants to take Dr. Stevens down. That's
Yeah.
his large motivation there.
Right. There's a grudge there because of that other case, and you think he's just dead focused on tying up Dr. Stevens in this whole murder.
Exactly. Eventually, the cops leave because Roger Moore gets very pissed, and understandably,
Yeah, right. Understandably so.
And then Roger Moore goes to visit his brother-in-law, Dr. Peter Hadley, and he goes to talk to him about the murder. Now, when I looked at the actor playing Dr. Peter Hadley, I was like, holy crap, this guy looks very familiar. He almost looked like a Roger or Rod Sterling from
Yeah, I can see
right.
that. Yeah, he
So
looked very familiar to me too. I couldn't place him though.
I looked him up, as I do with pretty much everyone here. He's played by an actor named David Hedison, and he plays Felix Leiter in Live and Let Die and A License to Kill.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You think Roger
So
Moore got on that job?
I would almost think so, right? Kind of like
Yeah.
hey, like, we had fun together. Let's do this again. If not
Yeah.
this movie, he probably was like, bring him back in, this James Bond one, right? So we can
Yeah.
act together again.
Very cool.
But they kind of talk about the murder and what's going on, and it kind of just recaps the last few scenes together, right? um, Dr. Stevens eventually goes back home, and he's like, good evening, Charlie, to the doorman, but Charlie doesn't say anything. And then when he goes to the elevator operator, the guy's not really assisting or helping out, and
Yeah,
he's
he's
like,
kind of zoned out.
he's like, are you sure you want to go back upstairs? And Roger Moore's like, yeah. And he
No, I
eventually,
want to sleep in the basement.
exactly. When he gets into the condo, he realizes that Lieutenant McGreevy and Elliot Gould are there. They're searching his apartment. And it turns out that there has been a break-in at Dr. Stevens' office. And for some reason, this gives the cops the ability to break into his apartment and search it.
Search
I
it, but
don't.
yeah,
I didn't get that logic there.
yeah, me neither. Because they say after I was like, before you say anything, I do have a search warrant. And I was thinking, like, how?
Yeah.
How did you get that on I really the only tie to Stevens in this whole thing so far, I mean, up to that point was the raincoat. And then I guess you could say that, oh, there's the raincoat and comment, and then his office got searched or got broken into and horrible things happened there. Like, I guess that's enough of a probable cause, like to get a search warrant. I don't know. It seemed a little weird to me though.
It was definitely a jump in logic
Yeah.
in my mind. Uh but it turns out that Dr. Stevens' office got broken into, so they all go there, and Dr. Stevens is met with the dead body of his secretary. I thought it was a
Yes.
very odd choice to have her naked, considering none of the rest of the film doesn't have any sex or nudity. So
Yeah.
for that to happen, to give it that R rating automatically because boobs, it was just really weird.
Yeah, that was talk about the rating a little bit because I mean, aside from that scene, there were a couple like we see some gunshots and squibs at some point later on. There's really not a lot here to give it that R rating. So you're right that the weird choice to make her naked in that scene was a little. Man, I feel like they would have gone for a wider audience and not had that, but
Exactly. This seems like a mom and dad date movie, right? And
yeah,
then or maybe it's, I don't know. It just seems very odd that they put that in there.
yeah, it wasn't narratively important because they didn't talk about in typical canon fashion, like there was no rape scene in like there was no narrative reason for her to be topless at that point, so you would think that they would go for the lesser rating and get more money, but
Exactly.
who
Uh
knows.
but Dr. Stevens accuses the lieutenant of keeping the body there to shock him, which it definitely did. And he was like, "No, I just needed a positive identification." And then he's like, "Okay, you can move her."
This
Um,
damn lieutenant, man, you just the hatred of this character is
I
ratcheting
know,
up in every scene.
it's insane. The lieutenant asks, about the case files for all of his patients, and he's like, "I don't keep notes. I record the audio for all of my patients, and then I code them and I lock them away." But I'm thinking he codes them in like serial number fashion and
Yeah.
then locks them away in a safe. He doesn't encode them with like some cipher or something.
Yeah, I had a little trouble figuring out what he was talking about there. Because then you see later in the movie, just to jump ahead a little bit, he's at like a computer terminal.
Yeah,
So was that just his way of saying we don't keep written records? It's all electronic records
I
because
don't
we're a
know.
crazy futuristic psychiatrist office. I don't know.
It's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, it
And
wasn't
also,
really clear.
you wouldn't think that a psychiatrist would record the audio of their meetings, but I don't know. I've only spoke to like one mental health counselor after my cancer diagnosis, and it was really just to get like breathing exercises, and that was it. Like I didn't, there was no like, there was
You weren't
nothing
they weren't recording
further.
you. They wouldn't have you like a movie camera in your face.
Exactly. So the next day, Lieutenant McGreevy meets Elliot Gould, and the only reason I say Elliot Gould is because he they say McGreevy a lot, but they never really say Elliot Gould's name a lot in the film,
A couple
right?
times. What was it? It's like Angelo or something like that
Yeah,
again, you said?
but they say
Yeah.
McGreevy a ton,
Yeah, they
which is
do.
good because you got to make sure that you remember your
Yeah.
characters' names.
McGreevy and Stevens. That's way more names than I remember in most of these movies.
Exactly. They go to a diner and they're talking about the case. Elliot Gould's kind of going like, "You have a really hard on for Dr. Stevens. He has a really good alibi. We don't think that he's the bad guy, right?" And
Yeah.
McGreevy is getting very upset about this and goes like, "We have to take him down. That son of a bitch ruined our previous case." Well, one of the funny parts of this scene was that there's like an old woman overhearing all of this, and McGreevy's like, "Go away. Take your
Yeah.
soup and go 2 seats away from us."
Yeah, Ted, don't forget your soup, dear. It's like,
It was pretty funny.
this guy, he's an asshole to everyone. I mean, she was just
Yeah,
kind of like obviously eavesdropping. She's like sitting right next to Angela, whatever, Elliot Gould, like practically like hanging over his shoulder, listening to them. It was a
exactly.
little it was a little funny.
Uh Elliot Gould brings up that the secretary that was killed was pregnant, and McGreevy immediately was like, "Oh well, what if Dr. Stevens got her knocked up and then had her killed?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"Is the secretary his girlfriend?" I was I was getting really confused at this point because just the way that they were talking, I was like, maybe the
Yeah.
secretary is his girlfriend and she's pregnant, you
Yeah,
know?
at this point, like you don't know McGreevy well enough to whether or not you can like safely throw away what he's saying as fake, or if he's actually like coming on to something, like he's actually got interesting and like actual real ideas about who it is and what the motives are. So yeah, I kept thinking like everything he was saying, all these like weird paranoid suspicions, I was taking them all at face value at this point still, even though I hated the character. And I was like, what? That's kind of a leap of logic. Like, why are you so focused on it? Like, it must just be that grudge after all.
Exactly.
It was too much.
As they leave the diner, they get a call on their radio that there's been another murder. Uh, I guess this is just to kind of show that these two work together, but this scene really doesn't add anything to the overall movie or plot. But we do get a really great line from McGreevy, where he goes up to one of the other detectives and he goes, "Was there a stocking on his face or ass?" And the guy goes, "Face." And he's like, "Well, we can rule out perversion then." But McGreevy's kind of like, "Okay, this
Uh,
guy they both had guns, they both shot each other, they both killed each other, they're dead."
yeah, what I mean, you think you already answered the question, but what connection was there of from like this scene to everything else that's going on? Like, was it the same apartment complexes where the secretary lived, or was there? I mean, that's the only thing I come up with.
I
Otherwise, it's
think
totally unconnected.
it's totally unconnected. I don't think this has anything to do with it other than showing the character bonding between
Yeah,
the two characters.
just kind of the dynamic between the two detectives, and
Yeah,
because at this point, like you definitely they've pretty well established the kind of good cop bad cop dynamic between McGreevy and Elliot Gould's character, and I guess
exactly.
yeah, they're just trying to cement that in your mind.
We flash forward to the evening. Dr. Stevens is with Dr. Hadley and his wife, and they're kind of showing sadness and remorse. And we finally get to realize that Dr. Hadley is the brother of Dr.
Brother-in-law.
Stevens. Yeah, brother-in-law. There's a better way of saying it rather than me going, he's the brother of the wife of the sister of the. It's his brother-in-law, and his wife is passed on, and they're kind of like, oh, you need to get out there, you need to love people, blah blah blah. um Unbeknownst to everyone, a man in a wheelchair is scoping Roger Moore out, and he locks himself into this motorcycle thing. Like he can put his wheelchair into like this cage and then locks himself in place into a motorcycle. It was pretty neat.
Yeah, I is this a thing that existed at this time, or was this some kind of like was this intended to be kind of a weird custom machine
I would
that they
almost
had for this
assume that it's a
movie?
custom machine for this movie.
It's yeah, it was really I'd never seen anything like it. Yeah, he like wheels up in the back of it, and it's like it looks like a really huge sidecar because there's a motorcycle attached to the side of it, which I'm
Yeah.
guessing is what is doing the actual like locomotive force of the whole thing. It was a really strange contraption.
Almost like a straight out of a Bond film. The man in the wheelchair hits Roger Moore. It almost seems like Roger Moore jumped out of the way just in time. But he gets run over and then he wakes up in the hospital where they're doing medical tests on him. And somehow Lieutenant McAvery and Elliot Gould show up at the hospital. I always find this odd in movies like this where the cops just kind of they just know where the main character is at because this is the 80s. It's not like someone could have just texted them. They would have had to have called down to the precinct that these two work at,
Yeah.
get a hold of them, and then have them come down to the hospital.
Yeah, it was kind of another weird leap of kind of movie logic. Because you're right, in at this point in time, there's at least 3 or 4 degrees of separation in terms of people who have to call other people who have to call other people to get that information. So it's like 3 or 4 hours have to have passed before they even know that he was there or that he was in an accident.
Exactly. Dr. Stevens immediately is like, it was a guy in a wheelchair and a motorcycle that tried to kill me. And I 100% agree with McGreevy right now. He doesn't buy it. I
No,
wouldn't buy it either.
it's it sounds like total BS nonsense.
Yes, and that's what McAvery's getting at. Elliot Gould is kind of being sensible. He's listening to both sides of the argument, but he's not giving any one person credence to what they're saying.
Yeah, he's not totally dismissing it outright, but also is like, yeah, that's kind of a stretch, but let's hear him out.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of playing the middle ground.
The next day, Roger Moore goes back to work and he's talking to a woman who's a nymphomaniac, I'm assuming. She is talking about how she needs sex.
All the
Uh,
time. It's like screaming in my brain and it
it,
won't go away.
yeah, it's like stabbing. And then Roger Moore's like, why'd you say stabbing? And he's like, she's essentially like, well, they put their thing inside of me. And I was like, wow, I can't believe they're going in this direction.
Yeah.
And then it's never brought up again.
It was a weirdly graphic and kind of, gut-wrenching description of sex, basically.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like you wouldn't think that you would give that kind of dialogue to a throwaway character who's only in for one scene.
Exactly. I thought that the character or something would have, I don't know. It was just really weird because it's such a memorable scene. You think it would come back around somehow.
Yeah, the only thing that is notable about it is the fact that she uses the metaphor stabbing, or like I think she says the word
Yeah.
knife, and you just see Roger Moore let up like knife. How do you know about knife? I guess he was starting to suspect other patients or something at this point, so he kind of like perked up and was like, what made you say that? That's
Yep.
it seems like a kind of a stretch to put this whole scene in there, right? This whole character around him noticing a word. I don't know.
If they, yeah, if they trimmed some of this stuff out and made the movie leaner, if it was like a lean 90 minutes, it probably would have been way better. Because you just have these superfluous scenes that don't really mean anything to the overall plot.
Yeah, I
Give Ann Archer more stuff to do, take
exactly.
away some of this other stuff.
All these other kind of side patients, which I guess if you're writing a mystery, maybe they were trying to misdirect you a little bit by putting in all of these other kind of, all of these other patients with their own kind of, emotional problems, and as, oh, they could be a suspect, or he could be a suspect, or she could be a suspect, to try and misdirect you, but it doesn't really work. It just seems confusing.
The reason it doesn't work is because those characters never come back. You have to have those characters come. You have to have Ann Archer's character, and I think we're giving away the lead here. You have to have Ann Archer's character competing with the screen time of the other people, and everyone's, I guess, issues have to kind of lead down the same path, but in different directions, right?
Yeah, for you to for you to plausibly suspect that it could be any of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But anyways, Ann Archer comes back, and she's like, "Oh, all those questions that I was asking you and all those issues, they were just for my friend. I was just asking for my friend." And Dr. Stevens is kind of just talking to her, and he's like, "Well, I guess that's okay." He doesn't really pursue Ann Archer any more than that, and then he goes home. And Dr. Stevens, he's very perceptive. I will give him this. Beyond outside of his practice, he's very perceptive of the outside world,
Yeah.
because when he gets home, the doorman Charlie isn't there, and he's like, "Where's Charlie?" And the other guy's like, "He's on vacation."
And that immediately he kind of like, he didn't say anything, but you could tell that he's suspicious of that.
And what's really odd about this scene is after they do that quick quip back to each other, they cut to Lieutenant McAvery outside of James Bond's condo, kind of in his car, looking at stuff.
Yeah, kind of casing the joint. I don't know. Was he at Roger Moore's apartment complex, or was he somewhere else?
That would have been so weird if the cutaway is just him randomly somewhere else in
For no reason.
Chicago.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You don't see him like look at, and you don't see the detective see Roger Moore walk in the building. Like you
The
don't really.
detective should have seen Roger Moore walk in, and
Yes.
then from we're seeing Roger Moore, and there should have been a window where we see the lieutenant drive by.
Yeah, like the focus pulls back and you see, oh, he's actually looking at it through a rear view mirror or something, just to kind of
Exactly.
establish where he's at. But no, we kind of have
Um,
to guess a little bit.
so Roger Moore immediately he kind of gets like nervous that the doorman isn't Charlie, which he
Hmm.
very well should, because the doorman starts to pursue him. And in walk the two best characters in the entire film. It's an
Hell yeah.
elderly couple. At first, I wasn't paying really too mind of them. They were just kind of like a bickering couple. Uh, and I know it's your quote of the week, and it's my quote of the week. And even
Heck
though I
yeah.
don't do quote of the week, but because this line came out of nowhere, I was like, "Holy shit!"
It's so good.
Go ahead
You
and
can do the honors.
okay. So the two elderly couples are talking, and he says, "You need a new fur coat, like I need herpes." What the fuck?
Oh, it's so good. Like, yeah, they walk in the door. We start to hear this again. They're nobodies. They're like extras practically. Yeah, like a rich older couple. They walk in. We hear them like mid conversation. He's like, "What do you mean you charged it? You need a new fur coat like I need herpes." And she's just like, "Well, tough."
Exactly.
It's so perfect.
And I was about to say, like, who talks like this? But that's something that, like, I guess that is something real people would say. That
Yeah.
is, it would be more different if it was kind of like, oh, I want a new fur coat. He's like, okay, darling. But the fact that
Okay.
he's like pissed that his
It's
wife
like,
is buying a new fur coat,
oh, it's maybe this is what rich people bicker about.
I
You've
guess.
already got 20 fur coats, Doris.
You need it like I need
You
herpes.
need it like I need herpes. God, it's genius. Mwah.
Roger Moore eventually gets to the elevator. The what do you call the person who operates the elevator?
The
Not like
elevator man.
the elevator dude. The
I
elevator
have no
dude who
idea.
pushes the
There you
button
go.
for you.
Button man.
Uh he's in on it as well. And the new doorman, he pulls out a gun, but the elderly couple, they show up, so he hides the gun and they all get into the elevator together. They riot it up. Roger Moore runs to his apartment where he starts barricading doors and he grabs a lamp to bludgeon someone over the head with. The two bumbling boobs are trying to knock down the door. I will say that the guy who is operating the elevator is smart in that he is constantly worried that someone is going to be coming into the apartment. He's
Yes, because
always on the lookout.
he kind of hangs out over by the front door and is playing lookout.
Roger Moore does call someone. He doesn't say anything. We don't see him say anything, but he does call someone. Uh,
Yes.
and it turns out that it's Dr. Peter Fadley because he shows up at Roger Moore's apartment like 2 minutes later with EMTs. And he's
Yeah.
like, we're here to save Dr. Stevens' life. And the two henchmen kind of just drift away into the background.
Yeah, somehow this whole ruse of them being doormen is somehow holding up when the brother-in-law walks into his brother-in-law's apartment and sees these two sketchy looking guys in doorman outfits in the apartment already
Yeah,
and like doesn't think of anything. Like doesn't maybe there's like a weird excuse exchange between them. I don't remember what it is, but it's I would immediately be suspicious. I don't care what you're wearing. You could be wearing a cop's outfit. If yeah, I walk into my house and there are people standing like, what are you doing in my house?
exactly. It is important to note that at one point, one of the henchmen randomly shoots his gun off inside of Roger Moore's daughter's room.
Oh, that's right. Did he? Okay, so I forgot. Did it just go off accidentally when they were like ransacking the place, or did he intentionally try to like shoot Roger Moore through the wall?
I thought he was trying to shoot him because even his partner was like, "Why did you do that?" He's like, "Don't worry about it."
Yeah, and then
Um,
it was never spoken of again. Yeah,
exactly.
really strange.
Eventually, Elliot Gould and Lieutenant McAvery show up at Dr. Stevens' house and they all start talking. And it's kind of weird because Lieutenant McAvery is like, there's no way to prove that you didn't just plan all of this as some ploy to prove your innocence.
Yeah, to kind of like misdirect the cops and because like he's like, well, no, I've got witnesses, and it really the only witness who saw the doorman is the brother-in-law. So the lieutenant is like, oh, it's a family affair. Then you guys are in on it together. And
A
of course, that
family
that that pisses
affair.
off the brother-in-law surgeon too, which is great. Everyone hates this
Exactly.
lieutenant.
uh Elliot Gould, he's like, we found the victim, it's a teddy bear. What I find it really odd that there's no like ballistics done. They don't look for like fingerprints. Lieutenant McAvery is just solely out to get Roger Moore.
Yes, and I mean, at this point, it's you already suspect that it's that grudge that he talked about from the beginning of him, losing his case for him. But it's so single minded that at this point it's starting to strain logic and credibility.
Exactly. It does. And I, especially when the twist happens, I have a bigger issue with this
Yes.
strife, right? But as the conversation continues, Dr. Peter Fadley's like, hey, I'm going to just call the police commissioner and file complaints about you. And I'm friends with the police commissioner because I delivered his wife's baby. He's totally bluffing because you could see it in his face. And he guesses the sex of the baby correctly. And then Lieutenant McAvery kind of drops the whole pretense, and the scene kind of just
kind of backs
ends,
off a little bit.
right? So Lieutenant McAvery and Elliot Gould go back to the diner, and they kind of again just recap what happens, but they bring up a new clue that Dr. Stevens' wife hit her will stated that if there's no kids, all the money that she had goes to Dr. Peter Fadley because he has kids.
Yeah, it goes back to because that's the relation is Roger Moore's deceased wife was the brother of or was the sister of the brother-in-law that we see him interacting with. So all of the money goes to him. But again, this is total misdirection because this never comes up again.
Nothing.
But
Yeah.
this again, I think it's another one of those things where they put it in there to intentionally misdirect you. I think this works a little bit better because at this point they throw that out there, and I actually did start to think, oh, maybe the brother-in-law is in on it. Like it actually did get me to file him away as potential bad guy for later.
I think because you get to see him throughout the movie, and he's always there in a helpful manner, right?
He's always present, and like you said earlier, the speed with which he got to that apartment after he called when the intruders were there is like, that was a little too quick. And now there's this thing about an inheritance that went someplace you wouldn't think. Very interesting.
Exactly. We cut to Ann Archer. She goes to a random payphone and calls up Dr. Stevens and warns him that he's in danger, and that at the end that's the conversation, and it just sort of ends.
Yeah, he's like, why don't you come up and talk to me? I can't. I've got to go.
Exactly. Elliot Gould is talking to Lieutenant McAvery at the police precinct, and McAvery's been taken off the case because Elliot Gould has put in a complaint that McAvery is too ingrained in it, and he has a grudge against Dr. Stevens, so it makes him an unreliable detective, which Elliot Gould is 100% correct.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. He's got every reason at this point to be you're too caught up in this personally. You've got too much of a grudge. It's starting to, I mean, very obviously affect your judgment. I would argue that it was obvious from the very beginning, but whatever. He's like you said, he's got every right to question this motive.
Exactly. And now we're in an hour into the movie, and for some reason, the movie decided to bury the best character an hour into it. Oh, maybe you don't like him. Okay.
No, I do like him, but I would that gasp was me wishing that he was in more of it.
Oh yeah,
that was a disappointment sigh for, man. I wish they brought him in earlier. He's so great.
exactly.
He's the polar opposite of the detectives we've gotten so far. So yeah, sorry. Proceed.
Roger Moore, he looks up in the yellow pages for a PI, and he just randomly chooses someone, and he ends up driving to a lower end part of the community, and he's looking around, and this old man opens up a door, and he's kind of like, essentially like, are you looking for me? and it's Art Carney. He was in The Muppets Take Manhattan. He was in The Last Action
Oh,
Hero. He's a recipient of an Academy Award, a Golden Globe, 6 Primetime Emmy Awards. He's best known as Ed Norton from the sitcom The Honeymooners.
very interesting. Well, I'm ashamed to admit, I didn't. I know the name. I didn't recognize him, but he was another person in this movie I thought looked very familiar, and I guess that's why. But wow, do those credentials explain the talent in his character also?
Exactly. I was uh pretty shocked that they had someone like him have such a small part in this movie.
Yeah,
But Art Carney plays Morgans. He just has one name. He doesn't get a full name, but that's all you need because Morgans brings more than enough to the table to make up for
yes,
that. Uh, Morgan's house that he lives in is pretty grungy, and there's cats everywhere.
everywhere.
Cats and clocks.
Oh, it's such a what a weird like interesting weird little character choices. Which it's just color. I love it.
But why only give one character that,
I
right? Elliot Gould is never fleshed out. Lieutenant McGavery is just angry cop.
right.
Roger Moore is just Dr. Stevens. And while we know that he has a dead wife and he has a daughter, nothing is ever painted more than that.
No, we get no background on him.
Ann Archer is just woman.
Patient number two.
They went all in on Morgan's, giving him character, giving him quirks,
Yes.
and that I guess they were just like, okay, this character that's going to be in this movie for 20 minutes, that's more than enough.
They realize that this guy has by far the most, clout of anyone. So they were kind of crap. We better give him something interesting to say and do and be. He's
Yeah.
he's an Academy Award winner.
So as Dr. Stevens realizes that Morgan's is kind of a schlub, he's like, I made a mistake. And Morgan's is like, well, if you're gonna cancel, then I have a cancellation fee. It's $50. And if you're gonna pay me $50, you might as well have to listen to what I say. And he kind of starts talking to Dr. Stevens about the entire ordeal that he's been going through, about the closeted gay man, about
Secretary, all
the
that. The whole
secretary.
kind of recaps the whole thing for him.
And Morgan's is very insightful and he's a very good private investigator. He's making very good, astute, and reasonable observations and
Yes.
connecting dots without going outside of the line, right?
Yeah. And you know what? Like the reason I think we probably both like this character so much is that he is the polar opposite of the police lieutenant, angry cop.
Yeah,
Because like he gets information out of people by making them like feel at ease. He even says like, "Oh, yeah, I know this is kind of a dump that I live in, but it puts, when people come in with their problems and paranoias, it kind of puts them at ease to see someone like living worse than they do or something like that." Like
exactly.
he's very, like you said, he's very astute and perceptive, but he gets information and insight from people by making them feel calm and at ease. And like it's almost like I know we've talked about Columbo before in other episodes, but he's like that's the kind of guy he is. He kind of like,
Exactly.
he's very disarming and charming, and people will instinctively kind of like tell him what he wants to know. Whereas angry cop is just basically, I think he's also good at getting information, but in different way. He's just good at getting people flustered into making mistakes by making them pissed off. Basically, interesting polar opposites in those characters.
Very true. Morgan suggests that Dr. Steven takes a vacation immediately to kind of draw out the killer. If you tell a limited amount of people what you're doing and then you're still targeted, obviously we can make better conclusions of who is putting you in danger, right?
Yeah.
And Morgan's is just kind of like, if you're gonna hire me now, so I'm gonna need a couple of big ones. And I just like the interaction where he's just kind of like getting the money from Dr. Stevens and
Give me money. Money, please.
exactly. Uh Lieutenant McAvery, he meets with the police captain in like secret
Yeah,
And
like a rail yard or something way out in the middle of nowhere.
they're conspiring, it seems, against Dr. Stevens. They're both in on Lieutenant McAvery taking Dr. Stevens down. At least that's how
Yeah,
I took the scene, right?
it was a little confusing because you can this is the scene where there should have been a turn and like, oh, this whole everything that we've seen so far from Angry Cop is a
A
ruse in some
ruse.
way, but we don't know why he was behaving the way he was. We just know that that's not how he actually is.
Exactly. It's really weird, especially because you don't know why he's doing it yet, because
Yeah,
they don't give you the foresight to get there.
no.
Um, but
Mystery movie.
exactly, Roger Moore, he's going to his car, he's about to turn it on, and Morgan's is like, "Don't do that." And good thing, despite being old as shit, Morgan's is pretty spry and stops Roger Moore because there's a big ass bomb
Yeah,
in Roger Moore's car.
like a Looney Tunes style bundle of dynamite.
And it's ticking. You can hear the ticking sound. And
Yeah,
Morgan's is kind of like, "Yep, good thing I couldn't sleep and I looked under the hood of your car because there's a bomb there."
yeah.
And he's like, "Let me go ahead and just dismantle this." And he does it with the ease of like flipping a light switch.
Yep, no problem. He's been around the block a couple times. He knows a couple things, thing or two.
Exactly.
So cool
Um,
though. Like that's such a genius idea because earlier on in the scene where they're talking initially and he says, tell everyone you're gonna go take a vacation. We don't know at that point. He didn't say that, oh, that was just to flush out people who might want to stop you from leaving town. But we realize in the scene there, or he's like, yeah, that was all a ruse. I told you to tell people that you were going on vacation to see what creeps might come out of the woodwork. And lo and behold, someone tried to, car bomb him basically, assuming that, oh, he's going to leave town. He'll start his car. We'll get him then. Such a like genius move on the PI's part.
exactly. And then they go back to Morgan's place to talk about the case some more. And Morgan gives more good insight. He's like, "Go back to all your files, your records on all your patients and read them as a detective, not as a doctor. Look for inconsistencies or weirdness in it. And also break up your habits. Don't use the same routes, don't use the same path, don't use the same schedule as you normally would."
Yeah, just totally shake up your lifestyle, your schedule, everything.
Which is good life advice for almost anyone. If you think that you're in mortal danger, you should not take the same
Yeah,
route to work every day.
at the
Shake it
same
up.
time.
Do something different. Uh,
Yes.
Roger Moore eventually he goes back to work the next day, and he's met by Elliot Gould, and they talk about Morgan's. And Elliot Gould, being the good cop that he is kind of like, "Don't you find it odd that this Morgan's guy found a bomb in your car the next day, and and this and that?" And he's also drawing logical conclusions,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of like, yeah, that is kind of odd that Morgan's found a bomb the next day, and
It was a
it
little
is
too
kind of odd
convenient.
for this, right?
Yeah. It was
Uh,
another great part, like they did with the brother-in-law. They set up, they give you a scene where you're like, oh wow, what an awesome thing. Like what a great guy. Where you like you get a scene where you trust a character. And then in the scene after that, the movie gives you just as valid sounding reasons to suspect that same character. So they like put you in conflict with one another, like, should I trust him or should I not trust him? I've got kind of like equal weights on both sides, and they did that with the brother-in-law. And they do a great job doing it here too with
do
the
you think it's
PI.
odd though that the brother-in-law character has now disappeared?
Yes, it's a little unfortunate because we don't really see him again,
Exactly.
but they did a
Uh
good they did a good job at the time.
yeah.
They just kind of dropped him.
Later that night, Roger Moore gets a phone call from Morgan's, and he's like, I almost said El Duce. That's not the name. Don
Don
Vinton.
Don Vinton.
Don Vinton is the guy, but El Duce. I
El
don't know where
Duce.
that came from.
El Duce.
Yeah, it stands for the Duce. And he's like, "Come down to the Navy Pier." So Roger Moore calls Elliot Gould, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going down to the Navy Pier. That's where my PI said that they found uh, the bad guy, and let's go investigate."
Yeah, because earlier on, Morgan's like, come alone, and
Exactly.
the Elliot Gould has already sowed some doubt into him. He's like, whatever you do, don't meet him alone again. Make sure you call me first, and we'll go together. So That's what we get.
And here we go. They're investigating. Elliot Gould looks so confident holding his gun. That's sarcasm. He looks very out of place holding a gun.
He does.
Uh, so they're
It's
investigating.
heavy.
Exactly. They're investigating the Navy Pier for all of 5 seconds when they hear a cuckoo clock go off.
Oh no.
And they move back some sheets, and it's Morgan's. He's hung, and he's got a cuckoo clock around his neck. I have to say, it's genius to keep the clock motif going.
Yeah, it's kind of
gimmicky,
of but
character.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. It's like it's kind of what a gimmicky way to dispatch an otherwise awesome character. I would love for him to have been through the entire movie, like you said. It's just so we get maybe 2 or 3 good scenes with him, and that's it.
And then it's over.
Bummer. That's all I could afford him for, I guess.
So Elliot Gould and James Bond, they go back to the police department, and they're talking to the police captain, and the captain's like, hey, I'm going to get a court order to look at all of your medical records. And Dr. Stevens goes, well, it's Don Vinton. And Elliot Gould's like, yeah, we looked up this Don Vinton. There's 5 possible leads. One of them's dead. Like, the other people couldn't possibly have done this.
Right. They were like doing like all these searches for that exact name, and even the FBI came up with nothing. It's just, sorry, it's a dead end. That name is a dead end. Are you sure you heard it right?
He's like, yes, I heard it right. That was a horrible impression.
I'm British.
I'm British.
I'm Stewart, Dr. Stewart.
Give me some tea.
All 2 of our British listeners have left the building.
So Dr. Stevens, he gets up in a huff and he goes, I'm going to the prison where I help out prisoners every week. 23 skidoo. And then he leaves. I don't know. That's what British people say, right?
Jolly good prison.
Jolly good. Dr. Stevens, he goes and he's talking to the warden, I'm assuming. And Dr. Stevens is like, do you know who Don Vinton is? And the warden's like, yeah, you were just looking at him.
Yeah, sure. He's right out there on the prison yard. He's the guy standing up against the wall there.
They all look like a mass of blue, but somehow this guy knows that that's Don Vinton. It's revealed that Don Vinton is just a nickname for the big man, kind of like the head honcho, the big cheese.
Yeah,
right?
Kind of like a slang term for the boss.
Exactly. And their Don Vinton used to like to nail people down by their scrotums and light them on fire.
Which was just like a major whiplash of like graphic description of violence. Like, what did we just hear? And again, like all the other graphic depictions of nymphomania and the like it gives you whiplash and then it's gone. And
exactly. I was like, that's the movie I want to see. I want to see the guy who nails people down by their scrotums.
I want the scrotum nailer movie.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Dr. Stevens doesn't think twice about it. He's just like, yeah, scrotums. Okay.
Yes. You hate to see it.
So Dr. Stevens, he goes to a bar that's close to the jail and he calls up Elliot Gould and he's like, Don Vinton's a nickname. And it means the big guy. And he's like, I think this is a mob thing because there's multiple people after me. It kind of makes sense. Elliot Gould is like, you know what? You're onto something. You stay there at the bar. I'll coming to get you. So Elliot Gould leaves to go get Roger Moore. Lieutenant McAvery is hot on the trail of Elliot Gould. But they get separated because a bridge raises and Elliot Gould goes over it. Lieutenant McAvery gets stuck behind.
Classic.
And, it makes you wonder how the end comes about. But anyways, yes, Elliot Gould eventually gets to the bar where Dr. Stevens is at, and he's like, let's go. I'm taking you to a safe house. Obviously, there's nothing suspicious here.
Nope, nothing to see here.
They pull up to a house, and even Roger Moore goes, so this is what a safe house looks like.
You idiot.
And Elliot Gould pulls out a gun. And it's the mob. Elliot Gould is the bad guy. And I even have written here, Elliot Gould is the bad guy. What? And then the camera pans up and I'm like, Ann Archer is the villain? Because she's standing in the window.
I have like almost an identical note. I said, ooh, twist. It was the cop and the patient.
I was so But okay, anyways,
Yeah, we'll finish up first.
as we go into the house, we're met with a guy that we never met throughout the entire film, and it turns out that it's Ann Archer's husband, and he's a mob capo, which is like a captain in the mafia.
Yep,
And
sure.
he is, for some reason, hell bent that Ann Archer has told Dr. Stevens something in confidence during their sessions together, the 3 sessions that they've
Yes.
had. Despite Dr. Stevens telling the truth, and
Yep. He's
like
like,
the guy is just hell bent that there is something secret
yeah,
here.
he this my wife, she went to go see you. I didn't know about it until later, and I'm sorry I can't take the chance that she didn't tell you something about my operation.
But it's so weird because they see Elliot Gould has been the secret undercover bad guy. Elliot Gould should have been like, this guy is like following all of the rules of being a doctor. And I kind of thought back, like maybe the nymphomaniac was a plant, right? To test his,
Yep.
to see whether or not he's a good guy, a good guy. Maybe, they did other stuff to kind of test the will of James Bond, and he passed all of them. Why are we here at this moment?
Yeah, really. I mean, the only way that Elliot Gould wouldn't do what you just said and kind of like, hey, no, he's actually telling the truth. Like, you got the wrong guy. You're fine. You don't need to murder him. The only thing I can think of is that Elliot Gould. He's just such a corrupt cop. He's just doing what he's told. He's not thinking about it.
Exactly. So the husband is like, tell me what you know. Dr. Stevens is like, I don't know anything. This goes on for like 10 minutes.
Yeah,
At,
all brand new information that was really not set up at all.
uh, the the mob capo husband is like, I'm gonna kill you no matter what, but you could save Anne. And all I'm thinking is like, who cares? We don't know her as a character. Let her die. It's not, she's inconsequential. And plus, if I'm gonna die, why the fuck would I care about her? Right?
Yeah, I mean, I
Um,
guess yeah. James Bond, he's a good guy, but
exactly.
from a narrative perspective, yeah, like why would we care? Like she hasn't had no impact so far, and other characters have had much more impact.
Exactly.
Why would we care?
Ann Archer calls the operator to call the cops because I guess 911 wasn't invented yet. And she gets kind of like
Chloroformed or
abducted or
something?
chloroformed or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
before she can say anything.
But meanwhile, at the police precinct, a random cop goes in to talk to the police captain, and she's like, "Hey, someone called the operator over in this area and hung up." And the captain's like, "Why do I give a shit?" And
What a terrible police captain!
yeah,
Like an
uh,
obvious lead from a suspicious neighborhood. Why would you not follow up on that?
exactly. But immediately after that, Lieutenant McAvery calls the captain, and he's like, I have the dialogue here, so let me make sure that I read it correctly.
Okay.
Because it was really weird. He's like, great, McAvery's tracked something, put a code 10, all cars, rub off Weaver, let's go. Mac thinks Angeli and the mob are heading for DeMarco's plant. So tell SWAT to surround the area.
I want the place saturated.
Which doesn't make sense to me because one, McAvery and Elliot Gould's character got separated. So how did they ever find each other? Was
Yeah.
Lieutenant McAvery suspicious of Elliot Gould the entire time?
That's the only thing I could think of because you're right. Like when he was tailing Elliot Gould, he wasn't even going to the mob boss's house at that point. He was going to the bar. Like how would he know where he was heading?
Yeah, I have no idea. Uh, Anyways, so they all show up at the garbage plant, and the mob capo's like, "This is what I do for a living. I take care of garbage." Blah blah blah. Which
Blah
is,
blah
I
blah blah blah.
guess,
Blah. Yeah.
like the most stereotypical mob thing. Like, I'm in recycling. Oh,
Yeah. I'm in
uh,
demolitions.
but what's awesome is that they they position Elliot Gould close to this garbage pit, and then they shoot him in the legs, and he's
Brutal.
like, it is so brutal. The mob capo is like, I can't handle corrupt cops because you guys are essentially like, if you're going to turn on me, or if you're going to turn on the cops, you'll turn on me.
Yeah, your liability. Sorry about it. in
And
the
then
shredder.
a giant shredder turns on. And Elliot Gould goes through the giant shredder and he's like, no, please, no. And well,
Jeez, like, yikes! What a way to go.
it was awesome. If the
Oh,
movie was like
yeah,
more this, holy
yeah,
moly.
very
Um,
brutal.
but then there's a chase. Roger Moore tries to escape. And then there's like a 5 minute scene of Roger Moore just getting the shit kicked out of him by all
Yeah.
the mob bosses, which is great. Not that I don't
Why
dislike
Roger Moore?
I don't dislike Roger Moore. I think he's a fine actor. I think it's great that all of a sudden Roger Moore didn't turn into James Bond and then he can take down all these mob people. It's it's this old feeble man trying to beat
Yeah,
people off.
basically an
And
academic, and
yeah,
he's like he tries to fight back at one point, and it's just kind of pathetic.
it
Like the
is. I even wrote down, holy shit, he threw a barrel at that guy and nothing happened.
nothing. He's in way over his head.
Yeah, but they just start beating the crap out of him. And then
More
the
pontificating by the mob boss too. Just like, oh my god, shut up. He's constantly just giving speeches about oh, I'm leading the dregs of society, and it's what a dirty world we live in. Blah 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 blah.
at this point I was hoping like just kill him so you can just shut up already.
Yeah, seriously, just shut the hell up. We get it.
The mob captain lifts up a lead pipe. He's about to bash Roger Moore in the head. Then he gets shot in the back, and it's the cops. And the cops come in and they kill everyone.
Hey,
They
like
literally
crack shots too, right? Because they're like on the other side of the factory, and they're just like hitting him with a 9mm revolver from like 200 yards.
maybe they've been aiming
I
while
guess so.
while James Bond is getting the shit kicked out of him. They're like, we got to make this one count.
Hey, boss, should we intervene here? This guy's getting the shit kicked out of him.
I need
Just
five
give it a
more
second.
minutes to aim.
This one shot's gonna be perfect.
But yeah, they kill everyone, and the police captain, he walks over to Dr. Stevens and he kind of like moves his body and there's no response, and he's like, hell of a way to repay a taxpayer. And Lieutenant McAvery kind of looks guilty.
Yeah.
At first I thought McAvery shot him.
Right? I was like, wait, did Roger Moore die? Did he get the shit kicked out of him to death?
I wrote down here, McAvery shot him. Oh my god. And then I rewound it like 2 times to rewatch this scene. It's just that Roger Moore is passed out because at the next scene,
He's up
Anne
walking
Blake
around.
is there and Dr. Stevens is there, and they start talking to each other, and she's like, oh, are you still a psychiatrist? And he's like, no, I quit. I'm writing a book about essentially how criminal minds think.
Yeah.
And she's like, does this mean that you can socialize now? And he goes, yeah, I'm going to go pick up that nymphomaniac that I talked to an hour.
She was smoking.
She was smoking. Ayo. No, he's like, yeah, sure. Let's go get a drink. And then as they're walking away from a distance, there's a gunshot.
We just hear gunshot. We don't see a gun or a barrel or anything.
And falls down. And James Bond goes, bastards. And the movie ends. Which, Roger Moore, it's the mafia. You just had like a capo killed. Of course they're still coming after you.
What did you expect? It was just the 4 guys and that was the whole mob?
I took down the mob single-handedly.
Jesus. What a stupid ending.
It is.
Am I right?
A very stupid ending. Lieutenant McAvery, there's no comeuppance for him being a shit the entire film. There's no like postscript to Elliot Gould's character of, I can't believe he was part of the mob, or we knew all along, or something like that. Right?
We needed an epilogue to sum up all of the loose ends. Like, oh, here's what we were doing the whole time. And
exactly.
Kind of pulling back the curtain a little bit. You see the Wizard of Oz and tell us how it all went down behind the scenes.
The brother-in-law character never came back to like nurse, Roger Moore back to health. There was nothing. It just ends with bastards.
Yeah. There was like a whole scene missing where, all these characters who the movie set you up to think that they may be suspects, they come back in and show that they're actually really good people. And, we needed a resolution and a little bit of explanation about why the mystery unfolded the way it did. but we don't get
Exactly.
any of it because like we're left to just assume that angry cop was suspecting Elliot Gould the whole time, and he put on this whole show of him thinking, trying to make people think that he was out for a grudge for that other case, and like we needed to like I accept the fact that we don't want to know all that up front, and we just get bits and pieces, but at the end, I feel like you need to tell the audience that to confirm what they were probably assuming, maybe.
So there's two ways that you can do a mystery, right? There's the we know all along, it's just the tension of the two not knowing.
Yeah,
And then there's this way, which is the Sherlock way. I'm not going
yeah,
to give you enough information to figure it out yourself, and then you're
yeah,
going to be shocked at the end. Um, if I was to restructure the movie myself, Morgans and Roger Moore would have known each other. They would have like lived next to each other. Morgans is the eccentric PI that Stevens doesn't really pay attention to, right? He's just
yeah.
the kooky neighbor. So they have a
Yes.
built-in relationship there until Roger Moore needs help, right? Ann Archer's character would have been more compelling throughout. There would have been like one, maybe two more red herrings, especially Dr. Peter Fowley, right?
Yes, the
Uh,
brother-in-law absolutely needed to be there more to be a credible option for who was behind the whole thing.
the lieutenant McAvery would have had secret conversations that you didn't get to see the whole thing with someone else going like, yeah, we're close on this one, just a little bit
Yep,
longer,
just
something
keep
like
playing it
that.
cool.
Yeah. Um, and Elliot Gould's character should have shown something. The thing is, Lieutenant McAvery wanted Dr. Stevens down hard. Elliot Gould's character should have been feeding into that of like, yeah, go ahead. Like, let's take him down.
Yeah. See, like the movie needed to set us up to think that Angry Cop was the mob sympathizer. Like all those secret meetings that you just mentioned, like those should have been there so that we would think, oh, he's meeting with the mob boss. He's like he's a crooked cop. He's just, you know, trying to get revenge or something. Like we
Exactly.
should have been led to think like, yep, for sure, Angry Cop is a mob. He's working with the mob to take this guy down as revenge for blah 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 blah. And Elliot Gould was a sucker getting taken up into it. And
Yep.
then the twist happens, and oh wait, it was Elliot Gould the whole time, and Angry Cop was out looking out for him actually the whole time, and the twist is less satisfying that way, or the way that we got it anyway.
It is less satisfying, but I think the movie overall is pretty good. It's pretty decent.
Yeah,
I'd give it a 3 myself. A 3 out of 5.
yeah. Actually, that's what I gave it to. 3 out of 5. It was a 4 out of 5 for me until the whole twist happened
The
because
end is a limp noodle.
the end is
Hardcore.
it's a real limp noodle, and honestly, the whole thing being quote unquote the mob, that just seems like a lazy option for it, like for it to, it's just not creative. Like everything's always the mob in all these stupid like crime thrillers and mysteries. It's always the mob. Like just I was wanting or expecting or hoping for something a little different, especially the fact that he was a psychologist. Maybe there's like a schizophrenic or some other kind of mental health related twist or motivation for someone committing these crimes and out to get him. Something a little bit more creative than the mob was out to get me. I don't know. That was a little disappointing for me.
I agree with you there. I mean, it just seems like if you write yourself in a corner, a mystery type thing, what do? It's the mob.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like kind of the cop out, the default choice. It's like, yeah. I mean, like you said, it wasn't necessarily terrible. Like they could have handled it better and still had it be the mob, and I would have liked it better. But the fact that it was A, the mob, and B, they also handled it poorly, is like, yeah, it was yeah, like you said, the end was just sort of a limp noodle.
Limp noodle.
But yeah, I mean, the acting, like all throughout the entire movie, like the acting was really great. Like you again, you the characters that the movie wanted you to hate, you really hated, and that's a testament to the performances for sure. And it was acted well and written well for the most part, and it looked really nice. It looked like a real movie. It was lit really well. It just, again, it's a nice refreshing change of pace from all these other kind of more canon-y movies that we saw.
Exactly. The Cannon Group was interested in working with Roger Moore because obviously he was James Bond and he wanted to capitalize on this.
Sure.
Roger Moore has been wanting to make this movie for quite some time, so the two paired up and got this movie created. It didn't do that well. It failed because of the rating, and that's something that Roger Moore actually complained about. I guess he was very upset that the boobs and everything else like that. Gave it a rating that
people weren't seeing it.
Made the general audience not want to go see it. This is one of the first Canon films that uses the metallic logo in synth tune. We didn't get to see it in our copy, but I guess when it opened up in the theaters, this was one of the first ones that really used that logo.
Interesting. The blue with the C and the lines, and that's cool. If you're curious about the jingle, head over to our YouTube channel. You'll
hear it all the time there. And also could have failed partly because Canon was very cocky in that they had James Bond, so they didn't really advertise the movie in the UK when it was getting released, which is a great way to for a movie. No advertisement, right?
Yeah, that's what a missed opportunity. He's that's like a built-in audience. Like, oh, I like Roger Moore. He's great as James Bond. I'll see him in this crime mystery thriller.
As we go on through the Canon film library, I'm less and less shocked of how they failed when I read stuff like that.
It's just very on brand for them to just mess things up so badly.
Exactly.
Because this is as much as we were ragging on the end of it, this is better than a lot of movies.
Oh yeah, this is
a similar genre, right?
One of the better mystery movies I've seen in a while.
Yeah, it shouldn't have done as badly as you said it did. It sounds like it was just kind of a combination of things. The rating needed to be toned down a little bit to get more people to see it, and they just didn't advertise it. No one knew it was out.
Exactly. Well, Greg, unfortunately, the next film that we would have watched, Sword of the Valiant, which is a sword and sorcery movie about the Knights of the Round Table and the Green Knight. Very hard to find. It is out there though. Right now it's a $60 DVD. So we're gonna have to exactly. We're gonna work a little bit harder to see this. We will eventually get back and watch Sword of the Valiant, The Legends of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. But
we'll table that one.
We'll table that one. We're gonna go to the next one. Now, when you think Canon, I know you immediately think of Criterion movies. And you'd be 100% correct if you thought that Love Streams, the 1984 American film directed by John Cassavetes, that is in the Criterion collection, would be our next movie to watch.
You're blowing my mind right now. Was there actually a Criterion release of a Canon movie?
Yes, this is a Criterion release.
What?
Yes. It has a 100% positive rating based off of 16 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes.
What?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Are we going to get two good movies in a row?
We might. Love Streams, released in 1984, is about two closely bound, emotionally wounded souls who reunite after years apart. That's kind of just the byline. Stars Gina Rowlands, John Cassavetes, bunch of other people.
That name sounds he was the husband in Rosemary's Baby, right?
Yep, he's Guy.
Huh. I didn't realize he was a director.
Cool. This was released in 1984, so this is close to one of the last movies that he did because he died in 1989.
Oh.
In fact, looking at his IMDb, King Kong's Faust, a Berlin Film Festival footage, was his last released thing, but this was his last released movie, Love Streams. So yeah, we're gonna see some highbrow stuff next time, and it's a long one. So I don't think we're not going to be able to do our typical beat by beat thing with this movie because it is.
We'll be here even longer than we usually are.
It's 2.5 hours long. I know. I shudder when movies get above 2 hours. Because I'm one of those things of, if you can't tell your movie within like 2 hours, maybe 2 hours and like 10, but 2.5 hours. Exactly. Uh, um,
Okay.
so definitely recognize this because I know we like to watch our movies, usually the morning of. We might have to watch this the day before or something. But yes,
So this is, I mean, if it's as good as you say, I'll buy into that. I'm okay with that. If this were a lesser known quantity and we would like could be 2.5 hours of dog shit, that might be a
it
DNF for me. But
it could be
I'll,
2.5 hours of dog shit.
it could be like what's the genre of this one? Is it like a romance or like a drama or
Love Streams is a drama.
okay? So no like love by love streams. There's no like actual like streams of supernatural love
No.
energy.
How
Don't
great would
cross the
that
love
be?
streams.
Don't cross the love streams. What did you do, Ray?
What did you do,
I
Ray?
crossed the love streams. But don't worry, Greg, because after love streams, we're getting right back into canon crap with Exterminator 2. So
Ah.
we'll learn our just right above this hill is more canon crap.
What is wrong with us that we're staring down a well-made movie with heart and drama and character study, and we're just like, get that crap out of the way. Give me the real crap. Give me that good canon crap.
Exactly. Hey, that's what we're here for.
That is what
Canon
we're here
crap.
for. Awesome. But no, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think really the closest thing that we had to that before was Lady Shatterley's Lover, which was kind of a disappointment. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
It was a disappointment, but I can't remember his name, but the guy who got paralyzed, Lady Shatterley's actual husband, he was a
Poor
badass.
bloke.
Go him. Well, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe. Leave us a review. You can also go to youtube.com. I think we're about like 20 subscribers away from us being able to say go to youtube.com/that's canon.
Oh,
You
is
need
that
like
the
you need
100
a
subscriber?
hundred subscribers in order to get your name. So we're almost there. Um,
Yes, please.
we by the time you hear this, it wouldn't be recent, but we recently hit almost I wouldn't say viral. I would say we had a 24-hour flu of Soviet Lord of the Rings.
We had the norovirus of internet fame. In
Exactly.
and out.
So if you haven't seen it, look up Soviet Lord of the Rings. It's really great.
Check it
Yeah.
out.
And remember, since we said it,
That's canon.